Imagination connoisseurs, join us for a special episode of Midnight Metal this Saturday night, where we have CK Smile, the lead singer of Chaosium, the Swiss metal band, an actual metal star on our metal show on Midnight Metal. Join co-host Dave Parker and myself for a night you won't soon forget.
Robservations with Robert, Meyer, Burnett.
Well, greetings, Imagination connoisseurs. Welcome to another episode of the Robservations Midnighter. This is episode 007, and tonight we have a license to kill. That's right. And on the Midnighter tonight, I have my very special guest host, Mr. Dave Parker. Welcome, Dave, for your first appearance on the Midnighter. How are you? Dave's frozen. Apparently, he's not here. I don't know why he's not here. Well, Dave, that was decidedly anticlimactic. Maybe you could reestablish communications whenever you can. I don't know why it didn't work. Well, anyway, welcome to the Midnighter. And Dave Parker will be back. And you, remember this show, you Imagination connoisseurs, you members of this, the Post-Geek Singularity community. Dave's back. Hang on a second, Dave. I gotta disconnect you from one side and put you on the other side. I don't know what happened, but my whole I didn't even introduce myself. You know, I am Robert Meyer Burnett. This is the Midnighter, and you, my friends, are Imagination connoisseurs par excellence. I thought Dave was here. I was going to give you a great big introduction, Dave, but apparently that just didn't work out the way I had hoped. But that's okay, Dave. Just give me a minute. I'll put you in, Coach. It'll happen soon. What do you think happened there, Dave? Did you hit the wrong button? Oh, hang on. Wait. Wait. Before you're going to give me excuses, let me put you on. You're on. Welcome, Dave Parker, to the first appearance on the Midnighter. How you doing, Dave? Now, what are you going to blame? What are you going to blame your mishaps on?
I was not with the Chrome. I was not one of the Chrome boys, and I fucked up.
Are there Chrome boys?
From Fury Road, the Chrome boys.
Oh, the Chrome boys. Yes. Okay, they're shiny and chrome.
I was not a Chrome boy, and I fucked up, and I started this without the Chrome. So,
well, that's okay. So, Dave, you know what? Tonight's episode, we're going to talk science fiction. Your favorite subject.
I'm a horror guy, but I love
You're a
science
horror
fiction.
guy?
I'm a horror.
Oh, horror. Okay, yeah.
Horror. I'm a horror guy.
Do you like Munsters, Dave?
I like Munsters and horror, but I love science fiction as well. Of course. Yeah,
I mean, they're kind of science fiction and horror are kind of intertwined.
If you're smart, yeah. I mean,
Frankenstein's as much of a science fiction story as it is a horror story.
Absolutely, but the thing is, if I didn't like science fiction, I wouldn't like Snake Plissken. I wouldn't like John Nada from They Live. I mean, how could I live without these things?
It's a good question. A good question.
You know, I couldn't.
Well, there's a couple of definitions of science fiction as a genre that I love, that I thought I'd throw out there. Brian Aldiss, the writer Brian Aldiss, who worked on, I think he wrote Super Toys Last All Summer Long, which was the basis for Kubrick's AI. Brian Aldiss in 1973 said...
Wait. Sorry.
Uh-oh.
He also was the originator of Roger Corman's last directed film, Frankenstein Unbound.
Oh, well, there you go. See, that's why I need you with me, Dave. So, Brian Aldiss defined science fiction in 1973, and it's one of my favorite definitions of science fiction. He said, science fiction is the search for a definition of man and his status in the universe, which will stand in our advanced but confused state of knowledge. I always thought that was good. Another good one.
That's really good.
Another good one, Frederick Pohl, who wrote like Gateway, the book Gateway. He wrote, or he said in 1968, someone once said that a good science fiction story should be able to predict not the automobile, but the traffic jam. I love that.
That's a very good statement. Can I just point out a couple things?
You can. That's why you're here.
His name is Frederick Pohl.
Yes.
And he said what? What were the two descriptions? Frederick Pohl and what? Jam? Maybe Frederick Pohl had a couple things he wasn't dealing with.
Well, that could be. That could be. I just wanted to, and then I wanted to end. This is a long one. Ray Bradbury said that science fiction is the one field that reached out and embraced every sector of the human imagination, every endeavor, every idea, every technological development, and every dream.
Well, you cannot argue with the Master Bradbury.
You can't.
You can't.
I thought those were great definitions. And you know what I was thinking about is, you know, last night I was talking a lot about Star Wars, and Star Wars is not science fiction. Star Wars is fantasy. It just takes place in space, so people mistake it frequently as science fiction. It has much more. It has much more in common with fantasy, the fantasy genre.
Well, I think space opera, in a way, is outside of traditional science fiction, especially in the literary sense, than it is in film.
Yep, I agree. I think to really what I think also about horror, science fiction, and fantasy, they're obviously literary genres. And one of the things I know for you and for me, when we were growing up, you know, we devoured, well, we both read a lot of horror fiction. I read a lot of science fiction. I didn't read so much fantasy. Fantasy wasn't my bag necessarily. I like dark fantasy, but, you know, after Lord of the Rings, everything, that was kind of the template. And there's other great fantasy stories, of course. I think I read the Lord of the Rings and the Chronicles of Thomas Covenant the Unbeliever, like Lord Foul's Bane and White Gold Wielder, and I read those books. But I was much more into science fiction. And, you know, when you're talking about movies, we actually have been blessed with some great science fiction movies in the 21st century. And I wanted to go over a list of things. I'm using a list that was published. It was actually published and then updated in IndieWire magazine. And I just want to ask you, Dave, if you've seen a couple of these movies. One of these movies that I love that is an ultra low budget movie, and it's called Coherence. And I don't know if you've ever seen this. It takes place at a dinner party. And like this comet goes by, and these people are at this dinner party, and one guy leaves the dinner party, and he goes down the street, and he comes back, and he goes, "You're not going to believe this, but there's an exact duplicate of this house and this dinner party down the street. There's a duplicate of each one of us." And it goes from there. Have you seen this movie?
I haven't seen that movie.
One of the things I loved about this movie was it didn't have a full script. It only had like a 15-page treatment, and it was improvised by the actors. And so what the director would do is they would set up the camera, and he would have one group of actors, and he's like, okay, you need to convince the people that are inside the house to let you through the door. And then he would tell the actors on the other side of the door, he said, under no circumstances, no matter what the actors say, are you to let them come through this door.
That's kind of brilliant. I mean, really, as like coming from someone who did a movie that was mainly improv, I wish I was as clever as that. Because I wasn't. And somebody goes, "Oh, I look lit." Yes, I am a little lit.
Are you lit tonight, lit. Dave? You mean I'm
a little lit tonight.
I was just liking the blue and the red. Oh, you mean lit? No, I know.
Lit. Yeah, someone already noticed that I was a little lit.
Lit. So. Well, that's okay. That's what the Midnighter is all about. You don't have to apologize on the
It's after midnight, guys. Sorry. It happens.
It's true. Now, let me ask you this. Have you seen Moorhead and Benson's movies Resolution and The Endless?
Yes. I love the fact that those two films and there was spring in between. But the fact that Resolution and The Endless are connected was really cool.
It was really cool. I was blown away by that. And then, of course, I think Inception. Big fan of Inception. Christopher Nolan's Inception.
Yeah, and wasn't The Matrix the first Inception, the sort of mindfuck movie of like, oh, what reality are you dealing with and what are you in? I always think that's really cool. You guys did you and Elizabeth did Predestination.
Yes,
And
which I love.
I think that is an incredibly underrated sort of mindfuck movie.
Totally. I totally agree. It's a great mindfuck movie. Also a literary-based movie. It's based on Robert Heinlein's story, All You Zombies, which is actually a very short story. And really enjoyed Predestination. I think it's terrific. And what a crazy time paradox movie that is.
Yeah.
Now,
but I was really impressed with that.
Yeah. There is another movie that I had not seen until recently because I got it from Arrow, a Russian film based on a Russian science fiction novel called Hard to Be a God. It's very Russian, but it asks the question, what would you do in God's place? And the movie is about a group of research scientists sent on a mission to a planet nearly identical to Earth, but where the inhabitants live in an oppressive society that evokes the Middle Ages. As scientists, the men are forbidden to interfere, but when one of the men is recognized as a futuristic god, he's driven by the need to save a group of local intellectuals from a murderous tyrant. That's hard to be a god. So,
Jesus, I would not want to be that god. I wouldn't.
Another time travel movie I dug, Looper.
Looper's amazing.
Looper is amazing, right? I like Looper.
But then we can go to, I mean, you're talking time travel movies. You can go Time After Time, which is one of the best.
I'm talking about movies that have only been released in the 21st century. These are new sort of modern classics.
You didn't lay that down.
I did, man.
That line, did you?
I did. I laid it down.
Sorry, guys.
I laid it down.
Right.
How about Ex Machina? Alex Garland's Ex Machina.
Amazing,
right? Loved it.
Really interesting.
Very apocalyptic, and it really deals with the ethics and the morality of how we're going to treat our artificial life if we ever get there. The singularity happens.
There's a really interesting movie that I saw. It's on Hulu now, called Lifelike, which is about a couple that brings in a android artificial intelligence into their life. He's a very rich, opulent the person who is used to having servants and those type of people around, and his wife is not, and so they bring in this android, what they think is an android, into their life, and that's a very interesting movie.
I haven't seen that.
It's called Lifelike. It's on Hulu right now, and I would say that's a very, very different, unexpected sort of sci-fi movie that has a lot of surprises into it. So
nice.
Yeah.
Doug Liman's Edge of Tomorrow, epic Tom Cruise movie. Are you not a fan?
No, I love it. I absolutely love that movie.
I love it too.
It's like, why don't we have at least two more of those right now?
I know. I would love to. I actually have a Japanese Blu-ray steelbook under the original title of the manga, All You Need Is Kill, which I'm like, how do you not go with that title?
America.
I know. Denis Villeneuve's Arrival, a science fiction movie about language. Who would have thunk?
I know, but I appreciate Arrival for its technical and the acting is really great in it, and I just didn't love the movie. I love Prisoners. I love some of the other things that he has done, but Arrival, it was like, yeah, it's really interesting, but it's so cold to me
Yeah,
emotionally.
I could see that. I could see that. I could see that. Um, Another movie, and I'm trying to, another movie that that these aren't necessarily the most well-known movies. Have you seen the movie that's mostly known for Scarlett Johansson doing full frontal nudity, Under the Skin,
Yeah, of course. I mean,
based on uh, Michael Faber's book of the same name. And Michael Faber's, he's also got a book called The Book of Strange New Things, which is a great science fiction novel that actually has a lot in common with The Sparrow, which is another science fiction novel that's being adapted into a TV miniseries by Scott Frank, who did The Queen's Gambit. I love Under the Skin, a movie that's almost pure cinema. There's hardly any dialogue in it, but it's definitely something that if you've never seen it, definitely watch Under the Skin.
well, you won't forget it, but the thing is, do you love it because it is so untraditional?
That's part of it.
Which ultimately makes it not as accessible to the general movie-going audience.
Yeah, no, but
which is not a bad thing. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm saying it's like maybe they should broaden their horizons, but that movie was not really successful.
No, it wasn't successful, but I really liked the film. I mean, I thought it was beautifully directed, and it reminded me of Nicholas Roeg's Man Who Fell to Earth. The alien gaze, and you really get the way he directed it. You're basically watching this alien entity, this life form, observe humanity.
But you could make the same argument for Brother from Another Planet.
Yeah,
the John Sayles movie, which is, I think, in its own way, just as powerful, if not more, in the way that he presented that movie.
Yeah,
the narrative.
I could see that. Her, I think Her is a masterpiece. I think a man falls in love with an operating system.
Okay.
I love that film. I mean, it deals with AI. It deals with the expansion of what we believe technology will mean to us in our lives. And the top two. Sorry.
No. I just found her a little emotionally desperate. And maybe that's me projecting on the Joaquin Phoenix character.
Right.
But I that's where I sort of disconnected with that film personally.
All right. Well, the second to the top of my list is Children of Men. I'm a huge fan of Children of Men. Alfonso Cuarón knocked that out of the park. It's a movie that it's dystopian in that people aren't having babies anymore. The human race might be dying out. And Clive Owen plays a man who gets involved with a one woman who seems to be she's going to give birth. And it's going to be the first human born in a long time. And lots of factions are after her. And there's a great dark sort of cloud of melancholy and sadness over the whole movie that I really love. And the way it's shot. Peak verisimilitude, Dave. Peak verisimilitude.
I love that movie.
Love it. It's really good.
No debate there. It's an amazing movie.
And my favorite science fiction movie of the last 20 years that a lot of people, I mean, you really need to make sure that there are no sharp objects around you when you watch it, because it is monumentally depressing, but also quite beautiful at the same time, is the Swedish science fiction film Aniara, which is about what happens to a group of settlers when they're going to move from the Earth, the polluted Earth, to Mars to start their new lives. And the ship that they're on, the giant sort of space cruise ship, has a mishap and it goes off course. And that's all you need to know going in. But
no, am I forgetting? We might be talking about the same movie, but I forget. What is it? The same movie that is the entire planet has to go on a trajectory to another place?
That's the Wandering Earth.
The Wandering Earth. I think in at least in the past couple of years that might be mine.
Well, that's a lot of fun.
That I really like. But that's the thing. The difference is you're looking for different things in your science fiction than I am, and I want the more fun thing, I think.
Yeah.
So I want the Wandering Earth. So I want the entire planet like jettisoning towards another place. I think so.
Well,
And
that
I haven't seen your number one choice, so
yeah,
I haven't seen.
Aniara is you've got to see it, and if once you've seen it, you might hate me for watching it, but it was one of those movies where I had only knew that I wanted to see it, and I knew it was like based on some Swedish epic poem or something. I didn't know anything about it. When I watched it, it was one of those movies where if you understand stellar mechanics and what's actually happening, I mean, you're watching it and you're meeting all these characters. You're like, oh, cool, this is cool. And then something happens and you realize that these people are fucked, and they don't know it yet. And boy, oh boy, do I love that film.
But again, you throw it on a very, very challenging line with your favorite science fiction films, because I could go, oh well, I love Slither. That's a science fiction film.
Yeah, it is.
And in the same part, Night of the Creeps with two companion pieces. It's like, I love that stuff. The Fly, one of my favorite science fiction films, and I would say is a science fiction film
Absolutely is.
As well as being a horror film. But again, if we're being pure sci-fi, I get where you're going, but it's a very gray area sometimes.
Well, as you know, on this show, The Midnighter, we ask our viewers, you imagination connoisseurs who are watching us now, to join the party.
Please,
so I have
save me.
I've thrown out a link for anyone who wants to join us and talk about your favorite science fiction movies. But I think, Dave, you make a good point. I mean, I was going for more heady fare, not so much pulp or not so much, I was highbrow. But I think that there's many joys to be had. I love Slither. I loved all the colors of the color out of space. The recently Richard Stanley's movie.
Yeah.
Based on a Lovecraft story.
Yeah, the one that I was talking to earlier, the one that I picked up today that came out on Blu-ray, was Joe Dante's Explorers, and
right.
I love that movie. And the thing is, what's wonderful about Explorers is it's such a pure vision of the hope of the future and sci-fi and everything else of having this heart with like making a spaceship that can go to outer space and meet aliens and then delivering in a very goofy way. But I think that movie's very underrated, actually.
Yeah, no, I think it is too. I think it is too. But yeah, I mean, that's the great thing about science fiction is it spans. There's so many different things under the sci-fi umbrella. I guess I was trying to think of movies I considered to be, look, I love Blade Runner 2049. I thought that was a great sequel to Blade Runner, and it really kept the ideas of Blade Runner going, and I thought it was beautifully made. There's a lot of movies that have come out in the last 20 years that have really honored the genre, which I think is great. And,
absolutely.
And both, I think horror and science fiction are in sort of the middle of a renaissance period. I mean, we're getting a lot of great horror films, a lot of different kinds of horror movies. Obviously, a lot of ghost stories, those have sold, but then we'll get something like Karen Kusama's The Invitation or The Ritual, which kind of, these. Yep. I love anything to do with cults. People
and science fiction films as well that are challenging budgets and everything else, that are making things really interesting the way they used to be.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We have a tip. Darth Plato writes in and says, I just watched For Your Eyes Only for the first time in 35 years. I didn't realize until now that the villain Roger Moore dropped down the smokestack was the same villain from the pre-Roger Moore days. Yeah, it's Blofeld. But they couldn't say Blofeld because of the lawsuit that Kevin McClory brought against the broccoli. It's so ridiculous. But yeah, I'll buy you a delicatessen. I love that sequence. That is actually a great sequence of live action photography and model work. That whole helicopter chase scene. You're now flying remote controlled airways. I love that. It's great.
It's true. Hey, Rob.
Yes.
I'm going to let you go.
What?
You take over this. Yeah, I'm going to let you go. You bring on someone else. I'm going to let you go now. We'll see each other on Saturday at midnight, Sunday morning.
All right, Dave. Well, you get some sleep.
I will.
All
All
right,
right,
man.
guys. Take care.
I'll see you
Thanks.
later. That was Dave Parker, ladies and gentlemen. Dave is gone, but you know who's here? Carl is here. Carl, hello, sir. Can you hear me? All right. I can hear you. Would you like to come on the Midnighter and discuss science fiction films? All right. Well, I'm going to bring you on. Just give me a second. We've got Carl coming on the show. I think Carl's never been here before. So it's good to have you. It's good to see a new face on this show. Let me just put you and make you look good in the frame. And let's see, Carl. Hang on. Wait, okay, you can hear me? I'm about to put you into the show. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Carl to the Midnighter. Carl, welcome. Now tell us, sir, where are you coming to us from right now?
Yeah, this is my first time.
Where are you at? Where are you at right now? Where are you coming to us from?
I'm down in Orange County.
Oh, you're in Orange County. So you're a local boy. You're in California.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
have you? Oh, go ahead. Have you been a lifelong science fiction fan?
Lifelong, long time. I love this kind of discussion.
What are some of your favorite science fiction films?
Let me see. By the way,
Yep.
sorry. You know what?
We can see and hear you. You're all good.
Oh, sorry. You know, I'm getting a double voice.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. Are you listening to the show live so you're hearing me twice?
Okay, I'm gonna turn that off.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. I didn't realize, but
Oh,
yeah, I've been a lifelong fan. Um, and I, you know what? This is the type of, uh, if you'll forgive me, the geeky sci-fi discussion den that I've dreamed of. So, thank you for bringing me on. You
oh
know,
yeah.
yeah.
Do,
So,
do you
yeah,
remember
please.
like when you grew up? What were some of your favorite science fiction movies when you were growing up? When you first started watching science fiction?
Okay, so I'm gonna reach pretty far back
All
and
right.
say this is a little bit before my time, but I would start with Forbidden Planet.
Oh, great film. Great
Yeah.
film. Leslie Nielsen, Walter Pidgeon, Anne Francis, based on Shakespeare's The Tempest from the late 50s. That's a great film. When did you first see Forbidden Planet?
You know, I can't quite remember. I think it was sometime in high school. And I'm glad you confirmed that. I thought it was my imagination that Leslie Nelson was there. I just had this vague
Nope.
memory that he was the captain.
Yep, he
Um,
was.
yeah. So yeah, I remember seeing that, and I know that even back then, you know, the special effects were pretty primitive, but I didn't really care about it because I love sci-fi, and the story was fantastic because it explored the whole thing about, you know, number one, the whole theme about technology outgrowing men's desires. You know,
Right, absolutely.
yeah, sometimes it can be great for society. It also can be very dangerous because of flaws in human nature. You know, and so there was a mystery component to that movie. There was the fact that, well, I mean, for that time, I thought the acting was great. So that's definitely one of my favorites.
It's a great film, and I'll tell you, Forbidden Planet was really the prototype for Star Trek. The original Star Trek series, Gene Roddenberry looked at Forbidden Planet, you know, the crew of people on C-57D. As a matter of fact, Warren Stevens, who plays the second in command, ended up in a Star Trek episode called By Any Other Name. So there's a Star
Oh,
Trek Forbidden Planet connection. By the way, I've got one more guest. I want to bring.
yeah.
I want to have all three of you come on together. Please welcome Jer, all the way from Finland. Jer, welcome back to Midnighter. And I know you're an imagination connoisseur. You are a science fiction fan as well.
Yes, thank you for having me back here. So can you hear
All,
me well?
Yep, we can hear you very well, all the way from Finland. Now, I would ask you the same question. Do you have a memory of the first science fiction movie that you ever saw?
Yeah, I I don't remember the first one, but I like my favorite sci-fi movies are probably like the Blade Runner. For some
Hmm.
reason, it really clicked me, and I really like the sequel by Denis Villeneuve. So
Yeah.
that's but for like some of the movies that I saw when I was younger was like the Bisexual Man by Robin Williams
Right.
and
Also
and
based on an Isaac Asimov short story.
yeah, I really enjoyed that book series. So that's it was really nice to see that made it into a movie.
Hmm.
And then Gattaca
Yep.
with was it
Oh yeah.
Ethan Hawke,
Uh-huh.
and there were so many sci-fi movies that it's really like even like Unbreakable is considered a sci-fi movie, I think, but maybe like a Total Recall. That's something that when I was a kid, I watched. I watched it first. I think that might be one of the first ones I actually watched. I watched it on my friend's garage on a sofa. So it's when I
Yeah.
was a really small kid. So
We have someone in the chat, Ishan Kumar, coming all the way here to us from New Delhi, India. So welcome, Ishan. He says, "You are the so we got Finland and India in the house tonight." Ishan says, "You are my Gandalf of the sci-fi community. My top sci-fi film of all time would be Jurassic Park. It got me irretrievably hooked on dinosaurs and prehistoric life. I remember when I saw Jurassic Park for the first time, I saw it at a theater that's not there anymore called the Galaxy in Hollywood. And I think, like Ishan, when I saw, I mean, those dinosaurs were absolutely photorealistic. The CG dinosaurs were amazing, and Spielberg shot all the dinosaurs from basically from below, like as if we're always, as human beings, we're looking up at them. So not only were the characters in the movie looking up at them, but the angles which they were shot made us as an audience, we were like put in the position of the characters in the movie. And I remember thinking, my God, that was in the early 90s, and the special effects technology. I mean, I was used to stop motion dinosaurs like in movies like Valley of the Gwangi or something, and to see, when Sam Neill takes off his glasses. I mean, that was an amazing moment, in science fiction history. What do
Wrath
you?
of the Titans.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
Now let me ask you, Carl. Why do you think science fiction has had such enduring appeal? And as we kind of live with our home computers and social media and biotechnology, every day that goes by, we've got probes on Mars. We're landing on
Yeah.
asteroids. We're kind of living in a science fiction world already. But why do you think science fiction appeals to people? What is the great appeal? Like, what is the appeal to you about science fiction?
Right. So I think you're dead on when you say that we're living in a sci-fi era, because I remember, when I was a kid, I had, Star Trek walkie-talkies, back when
Right.
we only had, I threw a fit to make my parents buy me the things, but I think, what, people are yearning for some understanding of the future, yearning for not always a positive view for the future, but kind of wondering, what, where are we going to be, 20 years or 100 years from now? And I think that kind of speculation is more than simply just entertainment. I think it's kind of a rumination about what kind of society we want, what kind of people that we want to be,
Mm-hmm.
and you have different views of that from different authors. And it's kind of like, I don't want to be too abstract, but kind of like humanity exploring visions of our future, and
Now,
I think that's always been, yeah.
I absolutely agree. Now, let me ask the both of you. Jer, obviously, a lot of science fiction does deal with the future and how we, as human beings, are going to cope with the future.
Yeah.
Are you optimistic about the future of humanity right now, from the period from where we're looking at it from 2021, May of 2021? coming out of a global pandemic. Are you optimistic about the future of mankind?
Yeah, I'm always optimistic. One of the reasons why I love Star Trek so much is because it has that very optimistic future, and that's I hope we get there some way, where someday when that happens. So I like you said, I think this week on one of your broadcasts, you want to believe, so to speak, like Fox
Yes,
Mulder said. So yeah,
I
I'm
do.
very optimistic. So
Now, I mean, I think one of the things that science fiction always does is try and, as I read at the top of the hour, Brian Aldiss's definition that we use science fiction to sort of examine where we're at. Where's humanity's place in the cosmos right now, and how is it going to change, and is it going to get better? Is it going to get worse? Like, what's going to happen? And like we talked about Blade Runner, one of the things I've always loved about Blade Runner is artificial life has been a recurring theme in science fiction movies all the way back to Fritz Lang's Metropolis in 1927. And one of the things about Blade Runner, and I think the central question in that film, is it really poses the question, are replicants, are they alive? Do they have souls? And even though they were manufactured beings that were gifted with memories, they're not simply mechanical. They're not machines. They're flesh and blood. They're physical, as Roy Batty says. And in that movie, you're asked, the viewers put in the position of a Blade Runner, do you retire these beings? Is it the right thing to do, or is it murder? Are you killing people? Are you killing beings that actually have souls? And if so, how are we going to reconcile with our own morals and our own principles if we create life that can think on its own, that can feel on its own, that's literally life, even though we created it? How do we deal with it? How do we still deal with it? Do we treat it properly? And if we don't treat it well, do we lose our souls in the process? What do you guys think about that?
that's I first of all, let me say that I'm a believer myself. I believe we have a soul, but the question is, we don't know. We don't know even if we ourselves have souls. So I believe that whatever is sort of like living probably has a soul. So I would say that if at some point we get to the point where we can create life, so to speak, I hope that we treat them same way we want ourselves to be treated.
Yes.
So
when I say soul, I mean not necessarily a soul in the religious sense, but we're self-aware beings, and every human being, I often say on our show that there's only, in the whole cosmic infinitude of the universe, there's only one of each of us.
yeah,
Which makes us, every one of us, unique. We're a very precious commodity, really, because I mean the universe is endless, and there's only one of us in the universe. Each one of us is completely unique.
absolutely.
And that alone is worth preserving human life. And I think that when you create beings that are self-aware, like one of the things I found interesting, I was never a dog owner. I grew up and I had cats my whole life. And then living with Elizabeth, we got a dog. And it was very apparent to me when we got our dog Gilbert, he's a Bernedoodle, how smart he actually is. And how he's learned to communicate. Like he comes up and touches me. He knows what to say if he needs the door open. He's even figured out how to open the back door to go out into the backyard one way. He can do it one way. But I've been surprised. Like, I don't know why, living on this planet, I should be surprised by this. People have owned dogs for thousands of years, but I'd never owned one. So I've always found there's a certain joy, and I feel like Gilbert, our dog, is this alien presence. And every day I'm trying to communicate with an alien that doesn't speak my language, but he's figured out ways to communicate with me, and now I'm trying to figure out ways to communicate with him. And I think that
you.
Yeah, he's training me. But I never knew, like, I didn't know just how smart these dogs could be. And it's fascinating to deal with. And that's kind of the way I think that all beings on this planet sort of deserve. I mean, I think one of the great crimes that humanity has perpetrated, and we don't really understand this yet, is animals, I think, are much smarter than even we give them credit for. And until we start realizing that just how, I mean, we think, okay, dolphins and whales are smart, but I think all animals are a lot smarter. They're here, they've evolved to be certain ways, so we're unaware sometimes of, because we're not asking the right questions. But I think the idea in Blade Runner is, are we as human beings going to have empathy? And because replicants were human, they did have souls and they did have intellect and they could love, as evidenced by Rachel in the movie. And that's what I think science fiction does such a great job of, is asking these questions, posing these questions to us, and not giving us easy answers. Blade Runner doesn't give easy answers, really. We're still talking about it. It came out 39 years ago, and we're still talking about Blade Runner.
Yeah, I think,
absolutely.
I think, like you said, I think science fiction is an arena where we can posit conditions of society that really challenge our ethics. And I think, right now, even as a current dilemma, we're wondering, I mean, how much sentience do you need to display before ethical considerations are applied?
Great. I think a question of the ages right there. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, I mean, at first you see these, I think one of the biggest dilemmas for Blade Runner is not only that, we're retiring them, is that we designed them with 3-year lifespans. There's that great scene where Roy Batty goes up the elevator, and he gets to confront his maker, and he's faced with the reality that, no matter what he does, he cannot escape his expiration date, his mortality. Yeah. And he lashes out. That's just, I think there's a lot to be said about that scene, but I mean, the whole thing is set up by the fact that, genetically, his lifespan, his destiny is already, and there's nothing he can do about it. He can't fight against it. He lashes out. But I mean, was it right for us to even design androids with such a short life? Because it was intentionally done to limit their ability to have their own choices.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. And so, we have to wonder, well, if we create clones or we create androids, what if we actually design them to be happy in servitude?
Yeah, you're creating a slave race.
Yeah. So, I one of the reasons why I like that film is because, and of course it's due to the source material. He's such a great author that it poses so many of these kind of ethical questions that I feel like are still relevant to our current society.
Oh, no, absolutely. And I think the best, it's a totally different movie, but that's why I was telling Dave, I like the movie Her, the movie where Scarlett Johansson plays an operating system and Joaquin Phoenix falls in love with her. It has one of my favorite moments in all of science fiction movie history, when he finally realizes, he asks her, you've watched them basically fall in love. He's fallen in love with his AI, and she kind of has fallen in love with him. And then he asks her, are you talking to, because it didn't occur to me when I was watching the movie either, the way it didn't occur to Joaquin Phoenix. He finally realizes that this woman is not just talking to him. This operating system is talking to thousands of other people at the same time, because she's an AI. And when he realizes that, he's sitting down, and I'm like, I was watching the movie going, oh man, because her nature
I thought you loved me.
Yeah, I thought you loved me, but I do love you. But how can you love me and 2,000 other people at the same? I mean, but it was interesting because that AI system is in fact a life form, and a life form that's way different than us, that has different values, and normally we would have like Skynet would take over and nuke humanity, and we'd have Terminators and all that. But in the case of her, these AIs weren't like that at all. These operating systems they're existing on a different plane of existence, and at the end of the movie, they just go away. They're like, well, our life form is so different than yours that we're just going to go to the next plane of existence. It's been nice. Bye-bye. We love you. We'll talk to you later. And, they leaving all of these people empty inside because their operating systems have left them. So it works on so many different levels. And I love that idea. I didn't expect that from that movie when I went and saw it. I thought it was going to be a wacky comedy about a guy and his operating system. And it turned out to be so much more than that for me. I don't know. Have you guys seen that movie?
I haven't seen that movie, but one thing came to mind when I was listening to that was the Star Trek Voyager, when the holographic doctor takes place of the ship's main doctor, and I really like that character because you can see his progress throughout the series. And one of my favorite episodes of Voyager is the one when he goes back to Earth to cure his original maker.
Right, Dr. Zimmerman.
And I really like that episode. And it's I know it's a little bit copy paste from the data from the but I still enjoy that really a lot. So.
Well, one of my favorite Voyager episodes is where the Doctor is the focus, and I don't remember all the details, but the last line where I think a copy of the Doctor was transferred to a planet that was in desperate need of medical assistance. I usually remember the episode names, but I can't remember that one. But there was a line where the Doctor, after having done all his work, the aliens in that planet said that he had a longing for home, and to have a hologram express that kind of emotion spoke to me about something about humanity, so that's what I remember.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's the episode we're thinking about, but one of my favorite episodes of Voyager is a copy of the Doctor is turned on in the far future on this planet, and they believe that the Voyager encounter is very different. Their histories about what happened is very different than reality. And the Doctor finds himself, it's called Living Witness, and it's one of my favorite episodes of science fiction, Star Trek ever. And you realize the past is not what what it seems, and the Doctor can tell them what really is happening, but that would shatter the belief system of what this culture has believed about the Voyager for so long. But I think that's another thing about science fiction, I think what it does so well, whether you're watching The Twilight Zone or The Outer Limits or Star Trek or your favorite science fiction film, is that, it really is a genre about what it means to be human. So whenever we're watching a story, it's really about ourselves. We're watching stories about how would we cope, and you really, I think more than any other genre, it poses questions that linger with you long after the movie or the TV show is over.
Yeah.
So,
and
go ahead.
Oh, please go ahead.
Oh no, I wasn't going to say. I didn't mean to interrupt.
When you mentioned Outer Limits, one episode came to mind. It was I think one of the reasons I really enjoyed that series was because every episode was totally different, and you could do like whatever came to mind. Like one of the episodes was it was focused on a planet that humans were living, and then one of the doctors there discovered that there's a repeating cycle, that when everything on the planet gets destroyed, and then nobody believes him, and when he tries to prove himself, they turn on him, and at the end, it's so old I'm gonna spoil the ending, but
it's okay.
The end, the doctor dies. His I think it was his girlfriend that manages to escape to outer space, and the way they actually killed him was because they framed him as a sort of like alien shape-shifting species, and the episode ends when the ruler of the or the leader of the place looks out to the window with his the right hand man, and they talk about, okay, so the leader asked, how did you frame him? And the right hand man, it was easy. I just used my own blood. And then you see when the right hand man actually morphs into an alien being and says that that the doctor was actually right. And when the leader turns back to the window, you can see you can see the destruction happening to the planet, and then you can see that the doctor was actually right, and everyone except the alien species that was actually hiding inside the planet was survived. So,
oh, I love it. Yeah. I mean, it's funny. I remember as a little kid, you'd watch Twilight Zone episodes and you'd tell your friends what happened because it was so mind blowing. Like, can you believe what happened on this episode? Well, what are some more of the most memorable science fiction films that you've seen? What are some of the other movies you both love? What about you, Carl?
Well, since you mentioned Twilight Zone, I watched the original series. To Serve Man, of course, is a classic.
That was the first episode I ever saw. It made me love the show.
Yeah.
It's so great.
I also saw the William Shatner, the connection to start where, he's trapped by his superstitions,
Right. Nick of Time.
Yes.
Nick, when he's, yeah.
Yeah. But in terms of sci-fi, I don't know. I mean, it seems rote now to say that it's Blade Runner because I've been saying that for so many years.
Right.
So I think I don't know. I mean, I've enjoyed sci-fi all my life, and I don't know. I enjoy each of the sci-fis for its own because I've read so many sci-fi books. I understand the tropes. I understand the milieu that they're trying to convey. So even if the movie is not perfect, it's low budget, or it's any of those things, I still enjoy them on their own in their own right.
Right.
So I don't know. I mean, I right now it's kind of hard for me to say because I think the best sci-fi movies have been the ones who are a little bit more independent, not so much the big, although I will say I think maybe the first Star Trek, the motion picture, is underappreciated.
Oh, I'm a huge. That's my favorite Star Trek movie. I mean, I agree. Like, it's completely underappreciated. Let me ask you this: do you ever go back and watch older science fiction films, or do you only prefer to watch mostly modern stuff?
Oh, I think, what? I don't quite make that kind of distinctions. I would say, number one for me is the source material. Does it actually have a connection to so many of the novels and the stories that I've read? And, I think I make a distinction between true sci-fi. I don't want to sound like a snob, but true sci-fi versus, popular sci-fi. If you know what I mean.
With you. I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah. And so I kind of know what they're trying to convey. I mean, for example, one of the reasons why I started watching your show is that I think we are totally in sync with regards to Star Trek. And I
love to hear that.
In terms of especially your thoughts on how it has developed. I'm trying to enjoy Picard, but it didn't really feel like Trek to me.
No.
It didn't.
No, and it's easy to do dystopian science fiction. I mean, they completely, in my mind, they ruined the Star Trek universe with Picard, and they also ruined the character of Picard because he's not. I mean, they're like, I understand Patrick Stewart wanted to be like he played Professor Xavier in Logan when he was old and he wasn't in control of his faculties. I just don't believe that Jean-Luc Picard would wind up that way on his vineyard writing books. I mean, he would be off in some archaeological dig in some far-off planet discovering the origins of the universe. That's what he would be doing. And it was just, I think it was convenient for the writers. I'm sure Patrick Stewart, too, wanted to play that part. But the rest of the show just turned into just sort of cliche sci-fi action adventure that was sort of half-baked, and we'd seen that all before. So
yeah, I felt like, even though, Picard went through that episode, where there was, I guess there was a kind of an android uprising. There was violence on Mars, I think.
Yeah.
I don't think from Next Gen, I don't see him as the type to simply. I would want him to spring into action. The Picard that I knew.
Absolutely. No, he absolutely would. Well, listen, Carl, I'm going to bring some more people on, but I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. This was a great discussion, and I really appreciate your take on science fiction. It's nice to know you and I park our shuttlecrafts in the same shuttle bay, as I like to say to people.
Well, thanks for bringing me on, and I'll be watching.
All right. Well, thanks, Carl. I appreciate it. That was Carl from Orange County, sort of a local boy. Good to have him. Good to have him on the show. Thank you, Carl, for that. I mean, it's interesting. I think Blade Runner, of all the movies, Blade Runner is the one film that the diehard science fiction fans really love, and I can understand why. And it's funny, when I first saw it, I saw the very first show in Seattle at the Cinerama Theater. It was in 70 millimeter, and Blade Runner was actually released with a special, I forget what it was called, like Surround 7 or something. It had a special bass response in the theater, and it was, that soundtrack, I love the Vangelis soundtrack, and it was a real experience. And, I don't know how many of us we're ever going to have the opportunity to have that kind of experience in the theater again. I'm hoping Denis Villeneuve's Dune will deliver those goods. I think that would be a lot of fun. But yeah, who knows? Who knows? You can only wish that things would get better. I want to thank Total Party Skills for becoming a member of the channel. And let's see if what we got here. We got let's see, Simon Gilmore is in line. Simon, are you there? All right, Simon, would you like to come on the show? Can I put you in, coach? All right, then. I will. I'm going to bring on Simon Gilmore will be coming onto the show. Let me add you in there, and it'll just take a moment. And so you're very familiar with what we are discussing, obviously. Well, I love to hear that. That's what we're here for. We're here to get to talk about science fiction and our love for it. So, Simon, welcome to Midnighter. First of all, where are you coming to us from?
Texas, Fort Worth.
Fort Worth.
Yes.
Wait a minute. Is that where they have the water gardens where Logan's Run was filmed?
Yes, it is.
All right. So
they closed that down a few years ago.
What?
They had unfortunate death there. Some people fell in and drowned. So I think some kids.
Oh man! So they have to close that.
Yeah.
Look,
they closed it. I think they may have reopened it, but with rails and safeguards and all that stuff. But yeah, it was pretty sad when I heard that they closed it down.
Oh man! So I take it you're an imagination connoisseur, obviously.
Absolutely.
And what are some of your early memories of science fiction movies? What were some of your favorites growing up?
Well, my parents took Paul and I to see E.T. in 1982.
Nice.
We were like maybe three and a half, but I can remember it so clearly.
Wow.
Still remember it. Just when it opens up and shows a star field and the whole opening. I can remember it so clearly. I know it's hard thinking that someone who's 3 remembers this stuff, but both Paul and I both do. We remember it so clearly, and we loved it so much. That's we fell in love with movies and filmmaking because of that movie. And then, home video, we rented, the Star Trek movies.
Oh yeah.
Of course, motion picture, Wrath of Khan, Search for Spock, and all those, and that just geared us even more up for the love of sci-fi and storytelling. And the sci-fi is one of the most unique storytelling devices, not only in film but in books as well. Even rock bands have made not compilations but story albums based on sci-fi themes, and it's one of the most imaginative ways of storytelling there is, and you can basically tell any story with sci-fi. And we were watching. It's on Shudder. We were watching a movie called The Machine.
Oh yeah,
starring Toby Stevens.
Yep, I know that movie.
Yeah, and we were kind of like, is this kind of a ripoff of Ex Machina? Yes, kinda. But it had some really good elements in the movie. The acting was top notch.
Yeah, I think that movie was actually made before Ex Machina.
Yeah,
maybe.
it was made, I think, 2013. Ex Machina was, 2016?
Yeah, I think so.
And so I was doing research on it, and it says it was made for $1 million. And for $1 million, that is such a very good movie for something low budget like that. The storytelling was great. The effects were really good.
Yep.
The music could have been better, but overall, the movie was pretty good. We really enjoyed it, and really recommend it for anyone who has the Shudder streaming service. What did you think of it?
I liked it. I actually own that movie. Again, I grew up loving. I would watch anything to do with science fiction, fantasy, and horror. So, I sort of automatically defer. Like I incorporate like, okay, this isn't a big budget movie, but it can still be very, very good.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought The Machine was recommended to me, and I'd never heard of it, and I got it, and I was like, wow, this is pretty good. Yeah. I mean, it's going over the same kind of themes. It's not breaking any new ground, really. No. It's just very, but I thought it was quite good. Yeah. I really loved it. Anthony Gonzalez writes in. He sends in a tip, and he says, so all this talk about Blade Runner, so let me ask you guys, is Blade Runner Ridley Scott's best work, or is it Alien, or is it something else?
Ooh, that's really good. Alien, I don't really consider sci-fi. I consider it more of a horror. Blade Runner, I think, is pure sci-fi. Let's see. Yeah, it's. I mean, it's hard to argue with Blade Runner not being sci-fi, but his greatest movie or greatest sci-fi.
I guess he's like his greatest science fiction movie, I suppose. I mean, it's funny to me because when I first saw Blade Runner, I thought it was a stunning achievement, but I didn't really like it. Mm-hmm. Because, it was coming a year after Indiana Jones had come out and 2 years after The Empire Strikes Back, and it was being billed in like Starlog magazine like this is going to be a sci-fi action thriller or something. Yeah. And yet I kept going back to it. And when Embassy Home Video put it out on tape, they put out the international version, which had where you actually see Rutger Hauer's thumbs go into Joe Turkel's eyes and pop his eye. It was just a little bit more violence. And I watched the movie a lot, and I really came to respect it. I feel that Blade Runner is almost more of a tone poem than it is a movie, because so much of the meaning of that film is conveyed through the cinematography and the lingering shots. It's actually the movie's actually quite still for a lot of it.
Yeah.
And even the beginning when the spinners are flying through the LA skyline, it's so, the film is so beautiful and it's just so gorgeous that almost every shot makes you sort of reassess who and what you are, and it's very much reflecting back at you, the audience member. And especially seeing it in the theater. And I saw it many times. Like I saw the work print version when they started finding like, oh, there's other prints of Blade Runner that somehow are in circulation, that if you wanted to go rent Blade Runner and show it at a revival house, they might send you the version that was either the director's cut or a different version of it than the theatrical, and that's how that it kind of got out, which I thought was pretty interesting. But over the years, I think it's become it's definitely one of the grand. If there was a Mount Rushmore of science fiction movies, Blade Runner would certainly be on that Mount Rushmore.
No doubt. Yeah, we didn't see it. I think we saw it maybe when we were 13 or 14, like 93 maybe.
Right.
On Laserdisc. A friend of ours had it on Laserdisc, and we went over and were like, we've always heard about it, never seen it, and we went over there and we watched it, and pretty much same reaction when you saw it. It was like, okay, this is cool, but the more you watch it, the more you fall in love with it.
Right.
And
yeah, you do, and it's got, you know, when you first meet Eldon Terrell, Joe Turkel, when he first meets Harrison Ford, is this to be an empathy test? You know, and walks out, and I want to show you a negative before I show you a positive. You know, and the whole thing about how can it not know what it is? I mean, it's really interesting to me because there's always the eternal question of whether or not Deckard is a replicant. And there's a, you know, look, that was really never something when I first saw Blade Runner that anybody really thought about. That was something that came later, I think, that debate, because, you know, the movie's not really about identity. It's not about Deckard is not questioning his identity, and the plot of that movie, there's nothing that betrays the fact that let's say he is a replicant. How would that affect the story that's being told? The only way it would affect the story that's being told is the end, when he's confronting Roy Batty. If he too is a replicant, the whole speech that Batty gives, and being there at that moment where Batty's quest is he wants more life because he does have a soul, maybe the soul of a poet even. And if Deckard's a replicant, it sort of takes away from Batty's struggle, at least in my mind. And I know there's a couple of people on YouTube that are very much convinced that Deckard's a replicant. Even Ridley Scott sort of changed his tune. And I mean, Hampton Fancher, the writer, doesn't think he's a replicant. But I've always thought that question is sort of irrelevant to the movie.
I think people get confused because of the dream with the unicorn. People think, well, if he's not a replicant, why would he dream something like that? Because he refers to the spider out the window and, you know, things like that. So I think people get confused about that. Personally, I never thought he was a replicant, but I think it's that dream sequence that really.
And that was added into the movie. You know, that wasn't in the original theatrical cut of the film. So that's another reason why I sort of object to it, because for the first decade that I was watching Blade Runner, that was never something that was part of the movie. And I've always thought that if he is, it diminishes the struggle of the replicants. You know, it's sort of, if he's a replicant and he's hunting other replicants, then what is this story really about?
Yeah.
And I think that the whole point is that Batty's struggle, the struggle of these replicants, needs to be seen through human eyes. So humanity recognizes that these replicants do in fact have souls. You know, they are these beings that are worthy of empathy and worthy of love and worthy of all of these things. And if Deckard's a replicant and he's not human, there's nothing to be learned from the movie. You know, because our central protagonist wouldn't learn anything.
Exactly.
And so that's kind of what I've always thought. I mean, it's kind of neat. It's a neat idea that Deckard's a replicant, but okay, if that's true, what does that mean for the rest of the story? Does that make the story better? And because it doesn't, I just don't buy that he is, even though Ridley Scott's like, oh yes, he's a rep. I'm like, but why?
Well, Ford never believed he was a replicant.
No, of course not. And it's because you would play it differently, and he would have been told he was a replicant. It would have been in the script, because that's what an actor would have done. But let's just say if he was a replicant, it doesn't matter. It doesn't affect the story. So that's why I say he's not a replicant, because if that aspect doesn't matter, and in the course of the movie, it doesn't matter either. You know, I mean, it also matters more when he takes Rachel away. If he's a replicant and it's, you know, two replicants running off together, who cares? The fact is, it's a human man and it's a beautiful replicant woman leaving together. It's the ultimate example of I mean, replicants are in a way a new species. They're not even natural born humans, and for Harrison Ford to embrace that in himself and give himself over to Rachel, who he knows is artificial, well, that says a lot about his human nature. But if he's a replicant and they run off together, it doesn't mean anything. So that's why I've always thought, well. So what are other sci-fi touchstone films that you consider to be some of your favorites?
There are so many actually. People ask me what my favorite movie is. I'm like, well, what genre? Like, I got so many. Science fiction. Yeah, I've always been a fan of Cameron's The Abyss, especially the director's cut.
Me too.
It's always been my favorite of his movies. There's just so many that I can't name them all. One thing I did want to tell you, a little humorous story is,
please.
Our dad took us to go see Raiders Lost Ark, 1980. We were born in 78, so we were pretty young.
It was 81. 81.
Yeah, 81. That's right. Empire was in 80, so 81.
Yes.
And so we had to leave because we were so scared. I mean, we were like 3 years old, seeing a movie that intense. We were so scared. So our dad's like, okay, fine, we'll go ahead and leave. And as we grew up, we always said that we would take our dad to go back to see Raiders Lost Ark if it's ever in theaters again, as an apology. And so when the the 30th anniversary came out a few years ago in IMAX, he wasn't able to go, but we told him that we're going to go see it. And he's like, okay, you better not come home early. He's scared again. And that's always stick out in our minds. And sadly, he's passing away from lung disease.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
And but we're taking we're living with our parents right now to help them out, and we're talking a lot to him about this sort of stuff, all the fond memories that we have. And he's always been a huge movie fan. He encouraged Paul and I to start filmmaking when we were about 14. He was our rooter. He always encouraged us. He said, why don't you make a movie and send it to Spielberg? So we did. We made it called Escape from Illusion, kind of a sci-fi-ish movie where like main character gets trapped in his own dreams.
Oh, wow. That's great. I love that.
Yeah, it was, mind you, we were only like 13, 14, so it wasn't that great.
Sure.
But it was a decent story, but we did what we had and we sent it. We got a letter back saying that Mr. Spielberg watched it. He liked it. He enjoyed it. You guys are obviously very creative young filmmakers, and encourage us to keep it up. And
that's amazing.
Yeah, we have it framed in our studio. You see it in the background of our channel. But so we started filmmaking, making indie films a few years later when we got more older, and moved to LA. And started doing our own thing in indie films, learned the business, learned the ropes and everything. And we moved to Texas about 20 years ago. And back then, there really wasn't much call for indie filmmakers in Dallas area.
Sure.
Now there is. Now it's like booming. Everyone's moving to...
Well, yeah, there's that. I mean, even though there's been a lot of controversy, the guys that made like Dragged Across Concrete, Bone Tomahawk, that was, I read the article. I mean, it's, despite the controversy there, but they're still making those movies.
Yeah, and Rodriguez is still
in Austin.
Austin. There are so many filmmakers that are moving to Austin. A lot of our filmmaker friends, they're making a move to Austin.
Right.
And there are so many cool places in Austin to film, like Predators. That was mainly shot in Austin, as well as Hawaii. And there's a lot of really cool places. Unfortunately, due to health issues, we haven't been able to do much as far as filmmaking, but we are writing. We're constantly writing. And of course, now with our dad, it's like, we're putting all of our effort into our father, who was just amazing father. He, like I said, he loved movies. He encouraged our love for film. Our mom wasn't too much into like Star Wars and And Star Trek, she just thought they were glorified war movies, which they are in a way. But
Right.
our dad, he got our peak interest in Star Trek and Star Wars. He had us
Nice.
watch the original series, which of course we fell in love with, and then '87 when Next Gen came out. So because of him, we became huge fans of the Star Trek series and sci-fi in general, and we owe him a lot because of that. Piqued our imagination.
Well, that's amazing. I mean, my father too would make sure that I got to go see the movies that I went to, even though he didn't dig them very much. But sometimes he was like, there was a moment where in '81 he took me and some friends to see Escape from New York because I was too young to get into R-rated movies, and he would never go. And he said to us, he's like, "Escape from New York. What is this movie about?" And I explained to him. I said, "Dad, in 1997, New York is a walled maximum security prison, and breaking out is impossible, but breaking in is insane." You know, because I was on the movie poster. My dad says, "That sounds pretty good." And like, he went in and saw it with us. You know, and he doesn't know anything about John Carpenter or whatever. And he comes out and he's like, "That was really good. I really liked that." And so he wasn't past, like, he would come in sometimes. And he would watch things. And
if it wasn't for our dad, we never would have saw films like Terminator or Aliens. We never would have experienced some of the greatest movies ever made.
Right.
And now we go into his room. He's pretty, not bedridden, but he's secluded in his room right now because he just doesn't have the energy to get around.
Right.
And we're constantly watching movies with him. Old movies, even from the 40s, 50s.
Oh, nice.
We've been getting him into more of the Asian, like Kurosawa and stuff. Which he never really got into in his life. We started getting into it in our like mid-20s, and so now we're trying to get him into it, and he's really enjoying them, seeing how brilliant they are. So it's precious time that we're spending with him.
It's so great that you're doing this. It's to have that. I mean, I didn't get to see my dad much in the last year of his life, and I wish I'd seen him more. Yeah. And this time, I mean, that you guys are there, you're there with him, because that's the best thing that you could be giving your dad right now.
Yeah, I just want to say, anybody out there who has aging parents, spend all the time you can with them, because before you know it, they can be gone. If you have any regrets in life with your relationship with your parents, make up with them. We had a friend whose parents died, and he said the most thing I regret of all is not making up with my dad, because we had a falling out.
Oh.
And he said, I wish to God that I could go back and patch things up. And that really struck. We never really had any bad relationship with our dad, but that still struck a chord with us, because we want to spend these few precious, could be months. The doctors say it probably won't last till the end of the year or into the next year. So these precious few months that we have with him, we're taking more advantage of it than we ever have.
Right.
And our older brother is coming down from Florida tomorrow to see him and spend as much time as he can with him. Our parents are precious. They gave us life. They gave us everything.
Yeah.
And a falling out can be fixed. It can be fixed.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, what a wonderful sentiment. I mean, maybe you'll write a science fiction story that's the crux of what the story ultimately is.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, something like
that.
And
then I wanted to get on your regular show, Robservations, and talk to you about how movies and filmmaking saved me and Paul and I, our lives, literally saved our lives.
I would love to, maybe on Monday's show, which is the 700th show, I'm looking for programming. I don't know what you're doing on Monday.
No, I got nothing.
Okay, why don't we schedule something like that? I would love to hear that story.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you've written to me, I think.
Mm-hmm.
The website. If you could write me about that, why don't we plan on it? Because right now I unlike my past shows, I'm having a very hard time getting people celebrity interviews and stuff, because people are busy. It's funny. Last year when I did the 400th show, I could get what I was calling people up. But now everybody's coming out of the pandemic, so they're busy.
Yeah.
So, but
the interviews that we've had on our channel, the celebrities that we've had, if you remember, including yourself, everybody was like, "Hey, yeah, we'll do it." Now it's like you don't hear anything from them, and
no.
It's
No, it was back last May. It was a real novelty. People had nothing to do,
yeah,
and now people are over it, and I think people
yeah.
are zoomed out.
Yeah,
Nobody.
well, I sent in actually I think I sent in 2 letters to Burnettwork. I talked to the Richard about it. He said, it takes time for these things to happen, which I completely understand.
Oh, and I've got a huge backlog of
Oh,
letters.
I'm sure you
So,
do. And but yeah, if we could do something on Monday,
oh, for sure. No, that'd be great. So we'll pencil it in. I mean, I wanted to go 11 hours, but that would only work if I was going to have a lot of these interviews and I've been trying.
yeah,
I've been a little frustrated because it was one person I was going to interview. I ran into them at a screening, and they're like, "Oh," because they said they would do it, and they hadn't got back to me. I felt bad because he was like embarrassed. I'm like, "No, dude, don't worry about it.
yeah,
I get it. I understand. It's just everyone's coming out of COVID. We're all getting inoculated. So
yeah. I was
don't.
talking to Brad Fuller, Brian Fuller's brother, Brad Fuller,
Yeah,
and we're trying to get him on with Quiet Place 2 coming out. And he said, dude, I'd really love to, but I'm just swamped right now. I'm busy getting ready to produce other movies and stuff. And I'm like, oh, no, don't worry, man. I know, you're busy. Don't worry about it. And he was very appreciative about that I understood. What time do you think on Monday? Do you have a time?
whatever's good for you. I was going to start the show at noon and then go from there.
Noon?
So
Okay, so that here will be about 2 our time.
yeah,
Yeah,
something like that.
okay.
Or it could be 2, 3, could be 4,
Okay,
whatever.
probably 2:30, 3 o'clock, somewhere
Yeah,
around
that'd be
there.
good. Because I'd love to hear the story about
Yeah,
your dad.
it's just warning. It'll be kind of emotional,
No, it's okay.
and we went through some stuff in our personal life that I would like to share, and like I said, tell you how movies got us through it.
I'd love to hear that story.
Might help someone else who's going through similar situations.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know there's probably I don't know if there's anybody else trying to get in, wanting to talk to you.
Well, yeah, I've got to. You know what? I got up at 7:00 this morning, and I lectured. I did 2 lectures for this high school class, and then I was on Midnight's Edge. So I'm gonna end the show now because I can barely stay
Yeah.
awake.
You do look a little tired.
Yeah,
You better leave before your eyeballs fall out.
I know it's been crazy because I've literally now been up. I just realized this. We walked the dogs tonight. Elizabeth's like, "Wait a minute, you've been up for like 19 hours," and I go, "I know. I have to go to sleep. I can barely." But it's good because I need to rest up for tomorrow's Midnight Metal show. But Mr. Gilmore, and say hi to your brother. Are you you're in the same place now, right? So you can
Yeah.
say hello to him for me. We'll
Yeah,
say hello to
actually,
him.
we may be both on using one camera, both on in our studio,
Oh,
talking
yeah,
to you
yeah.
on Monday, if that's okay.
Yeah, no, that'd be perfect. I was going to say both of you, but I was going to say
Yeah.
say hi to your brother for me.
Yeah.
And
I will.
it's good to see you again. I will let you go, but we will see you on Monday. And I want to thank you for calling in. It was a good
thank you
good
for
to see you
having me.
tonight. Oh, you kidding? It was great. It's great.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can hear my own voice. It's about to like disappear.
Shut
So
down.
yeah, I'm gonna go to bed now, and I want to thank you for coming on to the Midnighter. So that's Simon Gilmore, everybody. Thanks, Simon, for being here. Well, I guess you can't thank him because only I can talk to him. But Simon, thank you for being here, sir. Live long and prosper, and I'll see you on Monday. Well, everybody, I am going to cut this show short because, as I explained to Simon, I'm about ready to fall asleep. I can barely stay awake. So I'm going to end tonight's show. Always leave him wanting more, right? This show's gone almost an hour and a half, but we are going to do Midnight Metal, and those shows go like 5 hours. So if I didn't get you on tonight, tomorrow, definitely. I know there's some people in the waiting room. There's 2 people in the waiting room now. I will bring you both on tomorrow. So allow me this. I have to go to bed. I have to go to bed. I want to thank the Richard, and I want to thank Dean Mikatich for being here. And Dean has a wrench. I guess Dean Mikatich has now officially become a moderator. Welcome, Dean. Welcome to the welcome to the party. Of course, by the way, Dean Mikitich has been making some hilarious memes of the lovely Emma Bannon that have made me laugh out loud. So thank you for that, Dean. I've appreciated that. You can find those on the Post-Geek Singularity Facebook page and on the Let's Get Physical Media Facebook page. Some funny stuff. So I want to thank you guys moderating. That's very nice of you. I also want to thank everybody who supports the channel through tips and super chats. I very much appreciate that. And if you want to write a letter to the show, you can. And you can write it to, you can go to, I can't even think straight, the Burnettwork.net website and send me letters free of charge and I'll read them. But I do have a backlog. I'm slowly working my way through them. And on that note, I want to remind everyone that this weekend on Saturday's Midnight Metal Show, we're going to have CK Smile from the Swiss band Chaosium on Midnight Metal, our first actual metal singer on Midnight Metal. So that will be a great time. Tell your friends and go watch Chaosium's latest work on YouTube. And on that note, I would remind everyone that remember, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear. And all you have to do is listen. And with that, I would say to all of you, have a better night. I'll see you on the John Campea Show tomorrow, back here for Robservations, and then Midnight Metal. Yeah. Have a good night, everyone.